Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and on today's show, we've got some breaking Chiefs injury news, and this just is going to pile on to the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs are terrified to play the Houston Texans this week. It's do or die, win or go home for the Kansas City Chiefs. It doesn't fully knock them out of the playoffs, but a loss on Sunday Night Football against the Houston Texans will make it extremely difficult for Kansas City to make the playoffs this year. I'll be live for this game. I'm actually with my producer, JD. He'll be my live producer for that game. So make sure you're tuned in. We'll be going live at 6:30 Central Time, about an hour before kickoff. So make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you're there. And hey, I told y'all the other day, we're trying to beat the Chiefs on and off the field. Y'all stepped up. Y'all delivered because we are now currently ahead of the Chiefs Report, our Chiefs channel here at Chat Sports, for subscribers gained this week. But I don't want to stop here. I want to keep it going. Keep on hitting that sub button because we're going to beat the Chiefs on and off the field this week. But I need your help. If you're brand new to the channel, if you love the Houston Texans, and if you want free content around this team, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'll always tell you this. Give me 1 week to prove to you why this is the best Texans channel on YouTube. If you don't like it in a week, it's 100% free. Unsubscribe, but I promise you, you'll find a home here at Texans Today. First, let's talk about the breaking news. Let's talk about the Chiefs' injuries this week because they are decimated along the offensive line, and it's not looking good for Patty Mahomes. And I'm not going to try to smack talk too much because I do know at the end of the day, it's Patrick Mahomes. It's the Chiefs. Mahomes, arguably the best quarterback to ever play in the National Football League, but he's going to be without a lot of his guys protecting him up front. First, Trey Smith. He was inactive up against the Dallas Cowboys, dealing with a severe ankle injury, and it looks like he won't be able to go this week either. So, arguably, the best player on the Chiefs offensive line, maybe behind center Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, looks like he won't be able to go this week for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jawan Taylor left the game against Dallas, exited in the second quarter with an elbow injury. It looks like he is very questionable for this game as well. So we'll have to see whether or not Jawan Taylor will be able to give it a go. And then the breaking news from Ian Rappaport, rookie left tackle Josh Simmons had surgery on his wrist and is headed to injured reserve per coach Andy Reid, meaning he will miss this week's game up against the Houston Texans. This is going to be a doozy because the Texans, their defense, it's been rolling. Can they continue that against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this week? So go down in the comment section, predict it for me. How many sacks will the Texans get on Sunday up against the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes? Go down in the comment section right now. Predict it. Be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M's in my bank account. In my bank account. Let me know. How many sacks do you think the Texans will get this Sunday? Go down and let me know. I'll be looking down in the comment section. I'm probably going to go with 6, maybe 7. 6 or 7 sacks for the Houston Texans this week. It's Patrick Mahomes. You know they're going to try to make sure they protect him. He's going to be able to move around in the pocket like he always does. I always say he's the slowest fast runner in the NFL. It looks like he's moving in slow motion, but it seems like nobody can tackle him. And Andy Reid and this Chiefs offensive staff, they're going to pull out all the stops because like I said at the top of the show, this is a must-win game for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I expect Andy Reid to call a lot of running back screens or wide receiver screens. Get the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hand extremely quick. You know, those quick timing throws, expect a lot of those underneath routes to Travis Kelce. They have a great connection there where, a lot of the routes by Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, it's just, okay, is the guy off the line? As soon as he gets it, throws it to Travis Kelce. They're going to try to move the pocket with Mahomes, especially with this Texans pass rush. I expect them to have a lot of tight ends in there trying to chip, trying to, help out, adding extra protectors in there for Mahomes. And I really do think that they're going to try to establish the run against this Texans team because if they find themselves in a lot of second and long, third and long situations, well, that's just going to play right into the Texans' hand. And I showed you this quote earlier in the week. Andy Reid is trying to pull out all the stops. He's going to go all the way back in the playbook, pull out all the plays that he needs. He said, we're going to try to tickle your tonsils every play, every game. So if you don't expect 10 trick plays, 9 trick plays this Sunday, I think you're selling Andy Reid short because he is going to pull out every stop in the book to try to beat the Houston Texans this weekend. And he knows this might be the best defense that they'll face all year long. And it's going to be without most of their offensive line because this is the projected O-line for this Sunday night. Jalen Moore, right tackle. Wanye Morris, left tackle. Good luck, boys. Good luck. They have the second-year player Kingsley Suamaitai at left guard, Creed Humphrey at center, and Mike Caliendo. Yes, that's not the Frank Caliendo, the guy who does all the impressions. Mike Caliendo, of course. We all know Mike Caliendo. He will be starting at right guard, projected for this Chiefs offensive line. So, I expect the Texans defensive line to have an absolute field day up against this Chiefs unit because, like I said, it's going to be tough sledding for this Chiefs offense, and this Texans team needs to take advantage. They need to beat the Chiefs this week. And other injuries to watch, because it's not just along the offensive line. They have a lot of guys dealing with injuries right now. George Karlaftis, their defensive end, he's been playing with a thumb injury, which Andy Reid mentioned has been slowing him down as of late. Bryan Cook, defensive back. He is, one of their starting safeties. He is dealing with an ankle injury, is questionable for this weekend. Their 2 starting receivers, Rashee, Xavier Worthy, both dealing with injuries themselves, a hamstring and an ankle. And then Noah Gray, he is in concussion protocol, so another weapon for Patrick Mahomes that might not be available for this Sunday. Other injuries to monitor, but really, it's the offensive line. That is going to be the number one storyline this entire week as the Texans look to take down Goliath in the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, coming up, the Texans, they're not unscathed. They actually have some injuries of their own. Actually, while I'm filming right now, I see Aaron Wilson tweeting about him. So I'll talk about those injuries on the second half of today's program and some roster moves that they made. But before I get into all of that, got to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app out there. I love Prize Picks, so does JD, and I know you will too. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the holiday season, the best time of year for sports, bowl games, basketball matchups, playoff pushes, and it's all happening at once. While you and I are out here making decisions every single day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, what game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. There's a new feature with Prize Picks. New feature alert. Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. And another feature recently added by Prize Picks is stacks, and I'm actually using that in my lineup this week for Texans Chiefs. Jaden Higgins, I'm using a stack for him. So that means you can do one player up to 3 projections. I only did 2 for my man Jaden Higgins. I went more on the passing yards and more on the rushing and receiving touchdowns for Higgins. Patrick Mahomes, with all the injuries on the O-line, I'm going the less on his passing yards. And then Will Anderson Jr. Do I need to say more about Will Anderson Jr.? He's going to get a sack in this game, right? Right? So I'm going the more on the 0.25 sacks for my man, Will Anderson Jr. You can use my lineup or make your own. Just do it over at Prize Picks. And as you see, it's super simple to play. All you have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you can cash in big time. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, first, let's talk about the roster moves because the Texans, they actually made a couple different roster moves this week. First off, they signed Amir Speed, the special teams ace corner, formerly of the Patriots and the Colts. He played some special team snaps this past weekend. He was signed to the 53-man roster. So it was Solomon Byrd, elevated from the practice squad, signed to the 53-man roster, which kind of interesting to me, right? Because when you look at the Texans, I feel like they need a lot more help in terms of secondary, but I'll get to that here in just a moment. They also signed 2 players to the practice squad. So some movement along the roster. The major injury that we're looking at, Jalen Reid, rookie safety from Penn State, the 6th-round pick, the hidden gem that, Nick Caserio, shout out to him, shout out to this front office, finding such a talented kid in the 6th round. Injured his forearm against the Colts. Broke a metal plate from a previous surgery that he had on that forearm, and his timetable is up in the air. I don't think he'll be able to return this week up against the Kansas City Chiefs, But DeMeco Ryans did say he doesn't believe it'll be a season-ending injury for Reid. But in terms of this game up against the Chiefs, here are the options that I think are most likely for this Texans team, because we talked about the Honey Badger, we talked about Justin Simmons this week. I actually don't think either of those are going to happen. DeMeco Ryans said, we're going to look on the inside. We're not going to look on the outside for replacements for Reid for the coming weeks. Here are the guys on the practice squad that could be elevated for game time. And I really do expect these top two guys, one of them at least, if not both, to be elevated. Jalen Mills, he's already gotten elevated for a couple games this year. Kayvon Wallace was added to the practice squad, has a lot of, skins on the wall, has been around the NFL for multiple seasons. So I expect both these guys to possibly be game day elevations for your Houston Texans. Damon Arnett and Elijah Hussey, they're more the cornerback options. So if they want to, mix and match, move some people around, they could maybe possibly move up one of these cornerbacks. But I really do expect it's either Jalen Mills or Kayvon Wallace to move up. Still no word, though, on Jimmy Ward. And this is the big name that I thought, would come in and swoop in and really help this Texans squad out, especially with all the injuries in the safety room. Mum's the word, though. Still nothing on Jimmy Ward. We'll have to see whether or not he practices this week or returns at all this season for your Houston Texans. Another injury to talk about. Woody Marks was not at practice today. He injured his ankle up against the Colts, and he toughed it out, man. He got injured in that first half, was able to return in the second half, and had some key runs to win the game for your Houston Texans. He was not at practice today, but I didn't really expect him to practice early on in the week, especially coming off a game like that. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Woody Marks not practicing today, not practicing on Thursday, and then limited on Friday to give him as much time this week to recover that ankle injury. Something tells me Woody Marks is going to play this Sunday up against the Kansas City Chiefs, but we'll have to, watch it throughout the week, monitor his injuries. Another guy who could return from injury, Darrell Taylor. He was placed on IR after week 9, and you have to sit out 4 games. So week 10, week 11, week 12, week 13. It's week 14 now. He's already sat out those 4 games. So Darrell Taylor could, in fact, return for your Houston Texans. This week, we'll have to see whether or not he's able to go. And then the reason why the Texans were able to sign a couple players and make some roster moves is because they also made another one yesterday. And you might have seen my short. They waived guard Laken Tomlinson, which this was a kind of a shocking move. I think, DeMeco Ryans' front office, a lot of times they try to do right by the players. So Laken Tomlinson lost that starting left guard job to Titus Howard. And, even before that, kind of to Juice Scruggs with the addition of Trent Brown at right tackle. So the fact that Laken Tomlinson really didn't have a path to start for this Texans squad, they went ahead and waived him, allowing him to possibly play for another team. I don't love that move personally. I know they're trying to do right by Laken Tomlinson. They want to make sure, he's a veteran. He wants a chance to play. He wants a chance to start. I 100% get that. But, if you get any injuries along the offensive line, it would have been nice to have some veteran presence as a backup in Laken Tomlinson. But maybe this Texans front office, this Texans coaching staff feels more comfortable with guys like Juice Scruggs and Blake Fisher as the backups. Some other injury news before we get going is I did see this tweet from Aaron Wilson. Kamari Lassiter and Will Anderson Jr., they were not practicing during the media portion of today's practice. So just to be noted, I think it's more of a rest day for those guys. We're getting late in the year. The Texans had an early bye. So the fact that they don't have a bye week later on in the season, expect, these next couple of weeks for key guys, starting guys, especially guys who play like 100% of the defensive snaps like a Kamari Lassiter did this past week. Expect them to get rest days throughout the week to make sure they're as close to 100% as they can be for this weekend's matchup. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chugs. If you need any more Texans news, rumors, if you just want to chop it up, my DMs are always open. And if you made it to the end of today's video, help us whoop the Chiefs this week. Hit that subscribe button so we can beat them on and off the field. I'll be live later on today. I go live every Wednesday, 3:30 p.m. Central Time. Drop those H's in the comments if you made it to the end of today's show and if you're going to join me for our live show later on today.